It's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. How's it going, babies? The first question this week, I apologize for that, is from Blanner. It was left on my blog, stevelikescurse.com. Blanner asks, how, as an atheist and science fiction fan, could you not hate signs? In addition to the blatant supernatural religious overtones, i.e. God closed his throat, the aliens in this movie were worse than any extraterrestrial in any 50s B thriller or no-budget TV feature. These guys can't find their way out of a locked broom closet, literally. How do you defend yourself from these invaders? Board your windows, and it works. How to defeat them? Employ a lame trick purloined from The Wizard of Oz. All excellent points, all good criticisms of signs. All I can say is I liked it when I saw it, when I saw it in theaters, and then when I saw it again subsequently on DVD, because it got me, because I fell for its tricks. You know, it created a really good atmosphere, it created a really good sense of tension. I cared about the characters, and even though it is not something that I would like to see happen to many people in real life, I thought the arc of Mel Gibson's character was well done enough that it was satisfying to me at the end when he became the minister again. You know, not something I would encourage in real life, but not something that lines up with my personal views. But as a character arc, I think that it worked very well for him. And you know, the religious overtones, the spiritual overtones, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me if I think it's a good story. I mean, I like a good ghost story. I don't believe in ghosts. You know, I like if a story, and I don't think that there are aliens like that either. You know, but I enjoy movies that feature aliens if they're well done. If I watched it again today, it's been years since I saw Signs. If I watched it today, I think my opinion of it would probably be a little different. I don't know if I would like it less, or I mean, I don't know if I would hate it or not, but you know, when I saw it at the time, I really liked it, and I still think of it mentally as a good movie. Oh, look here coming. Look here coming. People say she's always so angry when we see her on camera, and here she is crawling up in Papa's lap. Hi. Hi. Yes, what a good kitty. Did you like Signs? You didn't even see it, did you? Next up, from Ex-Con Guitar. Steve, tell us a bit about your educational background. You have a pretty strong command over the English language. Was English your major? You also seem pretty knowledgeable about all the questions people ask, i.e. the Federal Reserve history. Do you research these topics so that you can answer the question, or do you just know this shit? My educational background is in English. I was an English major. I majored in English with a focus, a concentration on creative writing. And that's why I say I'm capable of faking being smart. I can sound really intelligent, but actually I think the really intelligent people are the science and math majors, because they actually have to know stuff and understand incredibly complex concepts as they actually are, and not just in the dumbed down popular layman's form that is meaningful to people like me. So yeah, I was an English student. English is still my main interest. You know, I consider myself a writer. And that's where I think that's how my head works. I think that's how my brain functions. My brain functions like an English student, like a language person, like a writer. And as for knowing the answers to questions and knowing stuff, particularly the Federal Reserve stuff, I know I'm not an expert on it by any means, and I'm certainly not the person to turn to as a source for insight on the Federal Reserve and its history and how it works. But the reason I know as much about it as I do is because a few years ago I wrote articles for my blog about income tax deniers. Income tax deniers are a particular kind of conspiracy theorist who insist that there is no law in the United States Code that requires people to pay federal income taxes. And when you point them to the laws that explicitly require people to pay federal income taxes, which are there in the United States Code, you know, they come up with something else. They say, well, that doesn't count, you know, it doesn't define what an individual is or whatever. All kinds of things that have always failed in court and have never proven to be compelling legally at all. But part of the problem with the income tax deniers is they all also absolutely hate the Federal Reserve and think of the Federal Reserve. They call it the beast from Jekyll Island. And so I learned a little bit about the history of the Federal Reserve back then when I first became interested in that subject and started writing about that. And that's mostly where my knowledge about things comes from, is either responding to someone who holds the opposite opinion and wanting to find out about that, or just looking up things that seem interesting to me. Christopher Hitchens once described himself as someone with a knowledge base that was very broad but not very deep. And I think that's a good description of me, and not nearly, and I wouldn't say mine is even a tenth as broad as Hitchens' was. Obviously, he was an incredibly educated and erudite man, but I think that's the type of person that I am. I know a little bit about a lot of stuff. I'm not really an expert on anything, but I have a breadth of knowledge, not necessarily a depth of knowledge in many areas. So there you go. Ducky003, are you a brony? And if not, what do you think of the brony community? A brony, for those of you who don't know, is a male fan of My Little Pony, the show and the toys, which are generally marketed toward little girls. And a brony is someone who says, I don't care if they're marketed for girls, I like My Little Pony. And you could also apply the term more generally just to people who don't pay any attention to the gender distinctions in entertainment. Like, just because something is for little girls and they're a guy, they don't let that stop them from enjoying it. I don't really consider myself a brony in that way, and I certainly don't consider myself a brony in the My Little Pony sense. I was never into My Little Pony. But I was kind of a brony when I was a kid because, you know, I was a big He-Man fan. I've made videos about He-Man. And He-Man had a spin-off about He-Man's sister, She-Ra, the Princess of Power, who was targeted toward the little girls, because the audience for He-Man and the demographics that bought the He-Man toys, or that bugged their parents to buy them the He-Man toys, that was almost entirely little boys. And Mattel and Filmation saw this untapped market of little girls that they wanted to go after too. So they created She-Ra to target the little girls, but also to tie it in with the established, successful He-Man franchise. And the She-Ra toys and the She-Ra show were very much aimed at little girls. But I watched it anyway, because it was more He-Man stuff. And every once in a while, He-Man would show up on the show, and it was, you know, it was just something else. It was He-Man-like stuff to watch, and I watched it as a kid, never caring that it was for little girls. It wasn't for little boys. And I even asked my mom for She-Ra action figures when I was, you know, when I was maybe 4 or 5, 6 years old. I think however old I was when She-Ra was on, 6 or 7 maybe. You know, and the She-Ra doll was like a little version, like a miniature version of a Barbie doll, like real fake hair, you know, instead of the molded plastic hair that the He-Man figures all had. And I got one of those for Christmas, and I got the little She-Ra horse that she rode around on, and you know, without being self-conscious about it at all. And it just didn't matter to me that those are girls' toys. To me, it was all He-Man stuff, and I didn't care. So in that sense, I suppose you could call myself, you could call me a brony, but I never thought of myself like like that, and I certainly don't have any problem with bronyism. Brony capitalism I have a big problem with, but not bronyism. Did you know? Do you like the pause? Could you see the wheels turning? I had to think of that, and I had to put that in. That's such a great joke. Brony capitalism. You've got to say that. Bass bait. Personal question that might just be a bit too personal. What are your thoughts on circumcision? I don't really see why this is a controversial question. To me, the answer is quite obvious. Just don't do it. It's a largely worthless operation. But what are your thoughts? I agree with you. I mean, I'm not. I'll be honest, I'm not like super passionate about this one, but I agree with you that it's a pointless procedure. And if I were to have children, if I had a child and a son, I wouldn't have him circumcised, just because, like you say, I don't see the point. Why would I do that? Why? I'm circumcised. Too much information? My parents circumcised me when I was a baby. I'm circumcised. I don't feel like I've been cheated by life. I don't feel scarred or mutilated or anything. I feel completely normal. It's not like, you know, I've had a handicap in my life. But by the same token, I see no reason to do that to a child. It's a pointless stupid religious procedure that yeah. Stian Sivertson, on your bookshelf, what book is the thick red one in the middle of the top shelf? Also, have you read any Dostoevsky? And if yes, what did you think of whatever you read? And what have you read from Voltaire? And why was he such an influence on you? And by the way, if I mispronounced your name horribly just now, please feel free to correct me and tell me how to actually pronounce it. And I will get it better next time, because I know I'm really shitty with names sometimes. That thick red book in the middle of the top shelf back there is a volume of Patricia Highsmith's Ripley novels, and it belongs to my wife. Dostoevsky, I read Notes from Underground in college. That's the only Dostoevsky I've ever read. It was good. It's been a while since I read it. I don't know if I could really offer you any insights on it right now, but it didn't really speak to me like other writers that I discovered in college. There were some writers that I read for the very first time in college that really resonated with me. Dostoevsky wasn't really one of those. Frank Norris was. I read Frank Norris for the first time in an English class in college, and I really discovered a great love for his work. But Dostoevsky wasn't really one of them. And what was, oh, Voltaire. Well, I read Candide in college, but before that, long before that, actually when I was still in high school, I read Voltaire's Philosophical Dictionary. And that was a huge influence on me, especially the entry that he wrote about religion. He wrote this brilliant essay in the Philosophical Dictionary about religion. And it was in the form of a dream or a vision that he supposedly had, where he was in a garden, and he was met in the garden by Jesus, and he asked Jesus all these questions about, why does the church... What about this? He basically quizzing Jesus about the rules of the church and organized religion, and why do we have to do this and why do we have to do that, and if a person doesn't say the prayer this way, what happens to them? And he basically, asks Jesus all these technical religious questions, and Jesus basically gives him the impression that none of that stuff matters. And Jesus tells Voltaire, the only commandment I ever gave you was to love each other and to love God, and anything else is stuff that other people have made up and put those words in my mouth. As long as you do those things, you don't have anything to worry about. You're completely cool. And that was sort of Voltaire's philosophy about religion. And it was a huge, taking that on and reading that and realizing that you had that option, growing up in a nominally Christian home, even though I was never incredibly devout, Christianity is still like the default religion. And realizing that it doesn't have to be, realizing that you can break away from that and you can say, you know what, this all seems like bullshit to me. There's something simpler and more pure beneath this that is really important. And for a while that's where I stayed. This was long before I became an atheist, before I decided that the whole thing was bullshit, that there was not even a reason to assume that God was there. But it was a step in my progression to deciding to let go of religion, deciding to let go of organized religion, and to focus more on just the basic concept of God and the concept of being good to yourself and being good to other people. And that was a huge influence on me. And I still go back and read that essay sometimes, even though I'm an atheist now and I no longer accept any kind of religion at all. That still the attitude of basically the number one thing to do, even though Voltaire frames it as a religious commandment to love God and to love other people, you can get rid of the love God bit, and the second bit about loving other people still works just fine. Radical Bacon, how old are you? I am 32 years old. I look good, don't I? For my age, I look great. Next up, Great Goat on Fire. Steve, you knave, would you ever replace a fully functioning limb/organ with a replacement with additional or enhanced functionality, e.g. super strong toes, bulletproof eyes, or artificial photographic memory? Would it matter if the technology that would be installed in you was cybernetic or biological? Bonus question, do you read the Laundry series by Charles Stross? To answer the last question first, no, I don't read the Laundry series by Charles Stross. I don't know if I would want to replace a fully functioning limb with a replacement or not. I kind of like my limbs and organs the way they are. I'm not against like the possibility of maybe one day having cybernetic or other kinds of technological enhancements to extend our senses or to increase our stamina or our strength, whatever. I'm not opposed to that, but I don't know, replacing a limb, cutting off a perfectly good arm and replacing it with like a robot arm or something, I don't think I'd be cool with that. Tyrone the Prophet, so what is the worst thing you've ever done? Someone asked last time if I could, if I were asked what's the worst thing I've ever done, could I answer that question right away? And I said yes. And so what is the worst thing I've ever done? It's not, I mean, I guess on the scale of shitty things to do, it's not horrible, but to me it was pretty bad. I had a one-night stand with a girl who was into me, but I wasn't really into her, and I kind of used her. It was consensual. There was nothing violent or rapey about it at all. We were both completely willing and into it. But afterwards, I was just kind of done, you know, and I didn't really talk to her after that. And I know through other people, you know, I know that she felt really terribly about it, and that I mean, you know, I mistreated her in that way. And this was years before my wife and I were together. You know, and it's the only time I've ever done something like that, and I still feel really, really shitty about it. It's one of my low moments in terms of my personal character, and that's the thing that comes to mind when I was asked that question last week. You know, can you think of it immediately? That's the thing that immediately comes to mind. Jason Payne, what are your thoughts on the Pope's resignation and how much of a contemptible piece of shit he is? Boy, he sure is a contemptible piece of shit, isn't he? You know, as I said in the good news video when I mentioned it, I'll take what I can get. I would much rather see the guy frog marched out of the Vatican in chains, but that's not going to happen, and that was never going to happen. So I will take what I can get. And some other people have pointed out too, rightly, that you know, getting rid of Benedict, or Benedict choosing to step down, doesn't really change anything, because the problems with the Catholic Church are not vested in any single person. It's a sick, corrupt institution. And, you know, like, just to take the clerical sex abuse scandal, you know, that's not just Joseph Ratzinger's fault. He definitely seems to be very complicit in it, and seems to have committed some horrible crimes to help cover up the even worse crimes of his priests. But it's not all his fault. It's just a really sick institution. The problem has existed since before Ratzinger was even born. I mean, the cases of priests abusing people under their supervision, under their care in the Catholic Church date back decades, if not centuries. It's a really old problem that's been an open secret tolerated by that church for generation after generation after generation. And it's not going to be fixed by one pope choosing to retire. Nevertheless, he is an asshole and a bastard and just a creepy dick, and I'm glad that he's not going to be around anymore. So, you know, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Birdie Me asks, is it true you have a 12-inch penis and used to be a porn star called Jake the Snake? Yes and no. Terry James, what's your opinion of cryptozoology, and will you do a 5 stupid things on it? Yeah, I think I am going to do a 5 stupid things about cryptozoology at some point. I don't know when. I haven't written anything yet. I don't really have it on on the schedule at this point. But yeah, that is something that people have suggested before and that I have thought about before. If I do one, it'll probably be instead of doing what I usually do when I talk about topics like that and list like 5 stupid things about the subject in general. I don't know why I did like a sexy lady silhouette there, but anyway, I'll probably do like 5 particular examples of cryptozoology that I find especially stupid. You know, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, things like that. I mean, I'll give them each one of the 5 slots and talk about them like that instead of doing just 5 general things. But yeah, cryptozoology is probably coming up at some point. It's a really, really, really stupid pseudoscientific thing, and it deserves to be mocked as ruthlessly and cruelly as you can manage whenever you have a chance. It's just so stupid. One of those things that people believe and you just shake your head and go, oh, come on. You know. Hey, that's it. While this cat here sniffs my nipple in a very uncomfortable way, why don't we do a shout out to end the show? Nipple sniffing from a cat and a shout out. That is perfect. The shout out this week goes to PackardPokesAt. PackardPokesAt is a podcast run by Packard Sonic, and I'm actually going to be on it. In fact, the day that I upload this video, I will be sitting in with the gang on PackardPokesAt, Packard and the rest of his crew there, and we're going to have a good time. And if you see this on the day I upload it, it'll be tonight, Friday, February 15th, starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central Time. You can see it on Blog TV, on Packard's Blog TV channel, and I'll put a link to all that down in the description box. And if you see this later and it's after the live show, you can download the audio of the podcast later from iTunes and from other places where he has it. So it should be a fun show. I've never done it with them before, and it should be a lot of fun. And it's a good show. I've listened to their past shows to sort of get ready for my appearance, and it's a really good show. They talk about the news, they talk about scientific advancements, and it's all from sort of a secular atheist type perspective, although they're not all atheists, and it's not like a blatantly atheistic show, but it's news and commentary and analysis and just generally talking about pop culture and having a good time from a scientifically minded secular perspective. And it's a good show, and I'm glad that I'm going to be on it. And the YouTube channel hasn't gotten a whole lot of attention at this point, so you know, go over and check them out. They have highlights from the show up there. You know, give it a watch, see if it's your thing, and if you're interested, check out the show that I'm going to be on. That's it. And look at this. This kitty was in my lap almost the whole time. Yeah, so now I ruined it, didn't I? She was in my lap almost the whole time. She's so sweet. See, when she climbs up on my lap when I'm on camera by her own volition, that's completely different. She's cool with that. It's when I use her for the good news videos, she's usually asleep, and then I grab her and I pick her up against her will and I hold her in front of the camera, and she doesn't like that too much. But this she's okay with, because this was her choice, right? It has to be the kitty's choice, doesn't it? Doesn't it? It has to be the kitty's choice. I'll never understand cats, especially lady cats. There's just when you put those two things together, when you put ladies and cats, you just give up. Anyway, that's it for this week. I will be back to do this next week to answer more of your questions. Assuming you ask, of course. For me to answer, you have to ask. So if you have a question for me about anything at all, and I think I've proven by the one-night stand question and the circumcision question that there's really nothing off limits. If you want to know anything about me personally, or you want to know my opinion about something, you want to hear me talk about something, anything at all. If you want to take advantage and plumb the shallow depths of my broad knowledge base, please, ask me anything. Ask me anything, and I will answer it next time. So leave a comment on this video with your question, and I will get to as many of them, you know, whatever, as I feel like next time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.